On the horizon for the future, for sure. Great up-and-coming brand. Not in the mix 10 years ago. Over there on the side. Bojangles, a regional brand, but not our #1 competition. Who was our #1 competition 10 years ago? McDonald's was a dead brand 10 years ago. McDonald's hadn't been remodeled. They didn't have McCafe. They were struggling 10 years ago to do anything good, anything right. So, I'm going to help you. Who are some, what? Did you win the shirt?
Yeah, I don't, yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you what, you win the cow too.
He was going to say Wendy's, he whispered it.
Here, you give it to whoever you want to. Now think of, she's right, think about this. How many would even consider Wendy's? Wait, Wendy's, I've heard somebody say this, Wendy's is a zombie brand. They're dead, they just don't know it yet. That was not the case 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, Wendy's, Dave Thomas was still alive. You remember Dave Thomas? Dave Thomas was still alive, and it was about quality, and he had an advertising campaign going, and it was really, really cool, and they were kicking it. They were doing great 10 years ago. They were our #1 competition. Now they're not even in the conversation. Now you've got Raising Cane's, okay? Now you've got Panera. Panera didn't exist. You've got, to some degree, Starbucks, although they're more beverage than they are food, but to some degree. Zaxby's. What about this little, what's this Mexican place called? Chipotle? Yeah? Any of you in here eat Chipotle? Yeah. So you can see that the competition is constantly changing, and the competition is getting more and more aggressive, hence McDonald's Southern Style Chicken Sandwich. I mean, in a way what they did was they did us a big favor because they released Southern Style Chicken Sandwich in New York. So they got people in New York City thinking about chicken for breakfast. Southern Style Chicken Biscuit, Southern Style Chicken Sandwiches. So at that point in time when we come into Manhattan, the ground's already been softened a little bit. So competition. The last thing, consumers. Boy, do consumers have power. Everybody in here has got one of these. And this is not just a phone, although I wish sometimes my child would use it as a phone. But this is power. Because you take pictures of things you see, you comment on things you see, you post things you see, and many of you have people who follow you and talk about you, and you all have created a different reality than what I used to live in. You all have created a reality that's a social media reality, a social relationship reality that people are always figuring out to do it. Facebook, Twitter, you know, Foursquare, Pinterest. I mean, there's all these things that are going on. I don't even know what the new ones are. But that's the power that consumers have now. You don't like how Seth MacFarlane did on the Oscars? Tweet about it. There were thousands of people that did. So you've got all these things that are causing pressure to innovate. Does anybody know what these are? What the term for this is? These are called sigmoid curves. This curve represents the growth cycle of an organization over time. Now I really want you to get this. The profits go that way, time goes this way, but as an organization starts, as they're birthed, there's usually some kind of startup that requires capital and a whole bunch of work and energy, and nothing good happens at first. You just are kind of spinning your wheels looking for traction. And then finally you get traction and you start to take off. and you go and you go and you go. But at some point in time, every organization will go through this. They will be born, they will live, and they will die. Every organization will do that. Whether they're a for-profit organization or not-for-profit organization, I mean, this is a life cycle that you can trace back to. If you're a charitable organization, if you're a church or whatever, you have to always ask yourself, where are we on this curve? And the only way to really, really keep moving forward over time is to create some kind of break or some kind of innovation that takes you to a different business model, takes you to something new. So think about it this way. Dwarf Grill, one restaurant, Churrit Cathy, goes and goes and goes, and he's plateauing off, bam, Chick-fil-A in the malls. Malls go, plateauing off, bam, freestanding restaurants. That's how this applies to the Chick-fil-A business journey. And so innovation is the thing that moves you over time to a healthy organization that lasts, because really, I mean, aren't we trying to last, right? Isn't that what any organization is trying to do, is keep going? Do you build something just so that it can die next year? You hope that it keeps going. And so that's kind of the secret to keeping it going. Two years ago, I started working in an innovation area at Chick-fil-A. That's when we drew our line in the sand and we said, you know what? We're going to admit that we're a maturing company now. And we've got to systemically innovate. And so we're going to put talent and resources and money on this thing. Because we can't just do it sometimes. We can't just do it when Truett says, hey, you know what we ought to do? We ought to say, my pleasure. And everybody goes, great. The founder wants us to say, my pleasure, yay. And nobody says, my pleasure. And then the next year at the annual business meeting, Truett gets up again and goes, no, really, we're going to say my pleasure. And everybody goes, isn't he sweet? Look at that guy. He's in his 80s. He's going, God bless you. Great. My pleasure. Yay. And the third year, he stands up and goes, you didn't hear me. My pleasure is what we're going to say. It's going to be a point of difference for us. It's going to be an innovation. And everybody goes, holy cow, he's serious. And everybody starts doing my pleasure. Truett's not going to be around forever, and he's not going to be able to do that for us forever. And so we as an innovation group have to systemically impact the entire organization to think differently, to stimulate progress, to work, to think beyond the box, to think beyond the current models, to think about the business differently. And so that's our job. We basically started this journey 2 years ago. And we asked people, we said, okay, staff, why don't we innovate more? I actually did a survey. I had 50 of my friends fill out a survey for me. People that I'd known for 20 plus years. Said, okay, I'm getting ready to start this new thing, this innovation thing. I don't even know really what I'm doing. I'm a marketing guy. So why don't we innovate more? And what I found was really interesting. I found a lot of my friends said, I don't know how. Don't know how. You could pin me up against a wall and I wouldn't be able to tell you how to innovate. I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what it requires of me. So there's a lack of knowledge on the part of the people in the organization to innovate because they don't know what you mean by that. The second thing, though, that we found was that there was a lack of time and also risk aversion. Lack of time and risk aversion. People were saying, hey, I could know how to innovate. I don't have the time. I'm too busy preserving the core. I don't have time for this. And at the same boat, you had people going, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that I'm going to fail. I'm afraid that I'm going to risk something. I'm afraid it's not going to work. I'm afraid that people are going to label me. They're going to label me a failure, and I don't want to be a failure. I just want to hide. It's okay. I'm going to just hide over here. I'm going to do my job, and I'm not going to risk it. Because people at Chick-fil-A feel a high level of responsibility for what goes on in the business. So lack of knowledge, and then lack of time or risk aversion. And when you think about it, what you're actually talking about there, relative to lack of knowledge, what you have to give people is competency. So the antidote for lack of knowledge is giving people competency. So we said, okay, if we're going to systemically strengthen the muscle of innovation at Chick-fil-A, we've got to make people competent. We've got to make people understand what it even is to innovate. We've got to help them define terms. We've got to have processes. We have to have tools. We have to have equipment. We have to have all this stuff that's going to bring competency. And the second thing we have to do is we have to impact culture. Now, if competency is what you know and what you do, culture is what you see and how you feel about it. Okay? So we have two levers. We have a lever of competency that we're trying to pull over here. We have a lever of culture. How are we going to impact the culture? Because if our culture is a culture of continuous improvement, that is not an innovation culture. If our culture is preserving the core, that is not a culture that's going to take ground in innovation. So we had to think about, we've spent the last 2 years working on these two things, competency and culture, in order to round out this third chapter in our Chick-fil-A innovation journey. So what's competency look like? First of all, we had to come up with terms. We realized that if you ask 10 different people with innovation, you get 10 different answers. So we decided to define it. We drew a line in the sand. We said innovation at Chick-fil-A means transforming new ideas into business value. That's what innovation is. That's what we socialize. That's what we teach. So that when people talk about innovation, look, it's not just for those of you that were in the class today with Lynn. I mean, you guys were talking about some great things that are innovative ideas. But an idea is not an innovation, we don't believe, until it provides business value. And business value can mean a lot of different things. One, it can mean it makes you money. Two, it can mean it improves the lives of the customers. Three, it could mean it improves the brand in some way. I mean, there's lots of different ways something can add business value. But we think innovation is transforming ideas into business value, so we had to define terms. The next thing we had to do, though, is we had to come up with a process. I could go on for this for another 2 hours, and I'm not going to. That's the good news. This model is our innovation process. This is how we transform an idea into business value. This is how we take a dilemma, a problem, opportunity, we solve for it, and we have something valuable come out on the other end. This model here is based upon D-School, design thinking models from IDEO out in Palo Alto, California. These folks have been doing innovation for years and years and years. It's based upon work at Procter & Gamble. We knew we weren't going to get people to innovate unless we made it simple. So you have five steps. First one, and those of you that, you got the shirt with the arrows on it, right? That's what these arrows mean. Number one, understand, problem well defined is half solved. Most of the times we are chasing things and we don't even know what we're chasing. We have an idea, we don't even know what we're trying to solve by it. We're just chasing something. We're really bad about this at Chick-fil-A. I mean, we do some stuff really good, but we don't do this very well. Because we have an organization that likes to imagine realities and then go put them into practice. And we have to back people up constantly and say, do you understand what you're trying to solve? Because I don't think you do. I meet with people weekly who are here, or they want to go make things. Oh, let's go this, let's go put it up. And they need to back up. So you have to understand what you're trying to do. Second thing, you have to generate ideas and concepts to solve those problems. That's imagine, that's ideation, that's brainstorming, that's all that stuff that you do. That's writing down your ideas, putting them on post-it notes and sketching things out. The third thing you do is prototype. Prototyping is all about putting things in three-dimensional forms. Those of you in Lynn's class today, you were talking about prototypes. You've got to build prototypes. That's great. You're going to figure stuff out if you prototype. You're going to figure stuff out if you make models of it. You don't want to put something out into the marketplace without having built it somewhere first. Step 4 is validate. You commercialize it. You see how it does out in the real world. And step 5 is you launch it in everywhere. And so that's what we teach people to do. So we had to come up with a definition for them. We had to come up with a process for them. It was easy enough for them to accept all that. But then we had to have a place. You can't innovate in a space like this very well. You can't innovate in office space very well. So we had an 80,000 square foot facility that was just a warehouse that we were storing stuff in. Just stuff, you know. You accumulate, Truett accumulates all kinds of stuff. And he stores it in these big warehouses, just stuff, you know. Overprints on this and that, and stuff we don't use anymore, and something that you bought one time that was half price. I mean, just... And so we took that 80,000 square foot building and we created an innovation center, and we call it Hatch. And yes, it's a chicken naming convention. Guess what? We're a chicken company. So if you walk around Hatch, it's an 80,000 square foot safety net. We want you to explore ideas in here. We want you to generate ideas. We want you to make things. We want you to break things. We want you to make them again. We want you to get it so right, by the time you put it in the field, it's not going to fail. It's okay to fail, but fail in Hatch. And in Hatch, we have the pen, which is the area where we prototype, and we have the incubator, which is the area, yeah, more chicken, I got it. Where we imagine things. We have the coop, which is our office area. We have the feeder, which is our cafe area. And you all are welcome to see Hatch anytime. If you're ever in Atlanta, give me a call, I'll give you a tour. It's a wonderful place where we do innovation. We had our grand opening of Hatch on 12/12/12. We were a year over schedule. We were supposed to have it on 12/20/11. It took us a long time to get this. We figured that one of two things would happen on 12/12/12. Either one, we would get Hatch open, or two, it would be the end of the world according to the Mayan calendar. This is our incubator area, just part of Hatch. All these tables and chairs and whiteboards, they move around. We can configure any kind of space you want. We've got project rooms, all kinds of things going on. We've got people, we bring in operators from the outside, they prototype, they test things with us, they build things. We work together, we collaborate. We even have 6 principles that we use in Hatch. We'll get into it here. We have 6 principles to help us think differently about how we work. So we're trying to continually press the organization to stimulate progress. When you talk about the culture place, or the culture piece, Hatch is important because it's an 80,000 square foot facility that everybody sees. But then we do other things too. We're big believers on outside voices. We're big believers on outside speakers. We bring people in to talk to us about innovation. People like Marty Neumeyer, who wrote this book. If you are an innovation person, or you have any business in the area of innovation, entrepreneurship, creativity, you need to read this book. The Designful Company by Marty Neumeyer changed our thinking on innovation. It's a great read. It's simple. It's short. There are lots of pictures, which is great for me. I would highly recommend that you read Marty's book if you haven't already. On March 8th, we're going to have an Innovation Day. We have 1,200 people on staff. We want people to come together and learn. So we're going to have workshops. We've got a Disney Imagineer coming to do a workshop on unlocking your creative potential. We're doing innovative workshops on our basics, on our process. And we're bringing in Joe Alves, who built the shark for Jaws. This is a great story. You've certainly seen this movie, right? You know this movie. You know what, when they put the shark in the water for the first time, it had never been tested in the water? Does that make any sense to anybody? And yet that's what they had to do. Because their timeline was this, and suddenly it was this, and they had to build the shark, and they had to send it to Martha's Vineyard, and they had to put it in the water, and it didn't work. And everybody screamed, the shark's not working, the shark's not working. Well, of course it's not working. You cut out, validate. You took a step out of the process. And so Joe's going to talk to us about that on March 8th. That's Joe. Back in the 80s, he had a fro. So, competency, culture. Basically, what we're trying to do is something that Jim Collins suggested in his book, Built to Last. Anybody ever read that? Built to Last is a great business book that takes a look at companies who have survived over time. I'm not just talking about 10 years, 20 years, I'm talking about 100 years. Companies have been around a long time. And in this book, Built to Last, he says two things. Companies that stick a long time do two things real well. Number one is they preserve the core. They know who they are, they know what their business model is, and they stick to it. Number two is they stimulate progress. And they do both of them at the same time. And so we are hoping to, in our innovation journey at Chick-fil-A, to go from just being a company that innovated at the beginning with Truett and then didn't really do a lot in the middle while we were growing, to now we're doing systemic innovation. We're hoping to move our culture from just being a culture of continuous improvement to being a culture of preserving the core and stimulating progress. Okay? That's real life stuff. That's what we have to deal with every day. That's what we wake up on Monday doing, and that's what we leave the office on Friday doing, is trying to get people to think differently about their problems, new solutions, new ways to think about issues, and moving the business forward. And not bad for a guy who was a Deakin graduate, MBA in theater. Kind of fun, or MA in theater. So, that's me. That's who I am. If you have any questions about The Walking Dead, I'm happy to answer them. And I have Chick-fil-A coupons for everybody. I told you you get free stuff. Some of you actually have, if you look on the bottoms of your chairs, you have some magnets there that I've strategically placed that you can take with you. And thank you very much for being such a kind audience. Go Geeks!